Once again, the Queen of Consorts surprises us, but not in a good way.
Made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
Windsor was meant to shine that night, but one unexpected arrival turned celebration into silence. Princess Catherine entered the gala prepared, graceful and calm, while the room watched every step she took. Then Camilla appeared without warning, and the atmosphere changed instantly. Within minutes, Catherine pushed back from the royal table, left her place, and walked out before the entire gathering could understand what had just happened. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine had arrived beside William with the quiet confidence of someone who believed the evening had already been settled. The Windsor Gala was not just another royal dinner. It was a major palace event, arranged to show unity, stability, and calm after months of tension behind closed doors. The royal table, meaning the main table reserved for senior family members and honored guests, had been carefully planned, so every seat carried meaning. Catherine expected order. William expected control. Both believed the night would pass without another public wound opening inside the family. Then Camilla entered, and Catherine felt the promise break before anyone said a word. The queen consort, meaning the wife of the king who holds royal rank beside him without ruling in her own right, was not supposed to attend the main dinner in that position. Palace aides had assured Catherine that Camilla would not be placed in the center of the evening. Yet there she was, moving into the room with a calm face, while the air around Catherine tightened. William noticed the change at once. He reached gently toward her hand beneath the table, but the prince already knew the damage had landed. Silence turned sharp. Catherine looked across the room and understood that this was not confusion. This was not a harmless adjustment. Camilla's arrival had disrupted the agreed royal arrangement in front of everyone who mattered, and Catherine was being asked to accept it with a smile. She did not raise her voice. She did not create a scene. She simply pushed back her chair, and the scrape against the floor cut through the gala more powerfully than any royal announcement. William froze for half a breath, watching her rise as the room followed every movement. Catherine walked out, and Windsor changed with her. What looked like one emotional exit was really the result of something deeper, something older, something tied to a promise she believed had been broken before the first toast was raised. Camilla remained inside the room, but Catherine's absence became the loudest presence there. William stayed still, torn between duty and loyalty, while the king's carefully arranged evening began to fall apart. And to understand why her silence felt louder than any royal speech, the story must move from the room itself to the people whose private wounds made that walkout inevitable. At the center of the gala were not crowns, titles, or cameras, but three people trapped by history. Catherine carried the weight of dignity. Camilla carried the burden of being seen as an intruder in a room that never fully accepted her. William stood between them, watching one evening threaten the fragile peace he had fought to preserve. In that room, every glance became a message, and every silence became a warning. Catherine had become more than a guest at royal events. She had become the calm face people trusted when the family looked divided. The gala mattered because it was meant to strengthen her public role beside William, not weaken it in front of the same people who watched the monarchy for signs of trouble. A gala, in royal terms, is a formal evening event where presence, seating, and timing all carry meaning. Catherine knew that. William knew it too. That was why the prince had expected every detail to be controlled before they entered. Camilla's arrival carried heavy weight because her presence at key moments had already caused discomfort behind palace doors. She entered with a controlled smile, but her eyes moved straight toward Catherine, and that one look said enough. The queen consort understood the tension. Catherine understood it too. This was not just about one woman walking into a room. It was about timing. It was about seating. It was about sudden visibility, where Catherine had been promised calm. And in royal life, quiet changes can feel louder than open insults. William felt the danger before anyone explained it. The prince leaned toward an aide and asked why the seating card beside the king had been changed. A seating card is the small name card that shows where each guest must sit. But inside palace events, it can also show rank, favor, and power. The aide lowered his eyes and gave no answer. That silence told William more than words could have. Someone had allowed this. Someone had made the change late. Someone had placed Catherine in a position where dignity and duty were now fighting each other in public. Charles watched the room tighten around him. The king placed his hand over the program on the table, as if hiding a mistake already made. He did not speak, but his face carried the strain of a man who knew the evening had shifted beyond control. Camilla stayed composed, yet the queen consort could not hide the truth in her eyes. Catherine had not been surprised by a guest. She had been challenged by an arrangement. William saw it. Charles felt it. Camilla knew it. The damage was no longer caused by Camilla entering the gala. The real damage came from the private understanding that someone had permitted it, after Catherine believed the matter had been settled. That broken understanding reached back to one earlier moment, one sharp trigger, one private incident that turned a royal disagreement into a night of open rupture. The Windsor walkout did not begin at the gala doors. It began days earlier, in a smaller room, away from music, chandeliers, and public smiles. Catherine had sat across from Charles during a private tea at Clarence's house, where one promise was spoken plainly. Camilla would not be placed beside her at the Windsor Gala. That promise became the line Catherine believed protected her dignity. When it broke, so did her patience. Catherine had entered that private meeting with caution, but also with hope. Clarence's house, a royal residence used for private work and meetings, had become the place where the family tried to solve problems before they reached the public. The tea mattered because it was not casual. It was a quiet attempt to prevent another scene of tension between Catherine and Camilla. Charles knew that. The king also knew Catherine had carried months of pressure without complaint, and that one more public challenge could make silence impossible. Charles spoke gently at first. He told Catherine the gala seating would be handled with care, and he gave her the promise she needed to hear. Camilla would not be placed beside her. The Windsor Gala, a formal royal event where seating shows rank and family unity, would not be turned into a public test of Catherine's patience. William entered near the end of that conversation, and the prince heard his father repeat the same assurance. The evening, Charles said, would be calm. It would be respectful. It would not force a rivalry into the center of the room. Catherine left that tea reassured, but not fully at peace. Camilla's name had lingered in the air long after the words ended. Charles had spoken with warmth, yet the king avoided William's eyes whenever the queen consort's role came up. That small hesitation stayed with Catherine. It stayed with William too. The prince knew his father well enough to understand when duty was pulling him in two directions. Charles wanted peace, but the monarch also feared what would happen if Camilla felt pushed aside. Then the revised seating note arrived. Catherine opened it expecting confirmation. But one added place near the king's table changed everything. A seating note is a written palace plan showing where key guests will sit, and in royal life, that small detail can carry heavy meaning. Camilla's position had shifted. Catherine had not been told directly. William took the note from her hand, read it once, folded it, then folded it again. He placed it in his jacket pocket, instead of confronting Charles immediately. That decision to wait became costly. William believed there was still time to correct the change quietly, but Catherine understood the danger at once. A promise made face-to-face had been weakened by paper. A private assurance had been replaced by a public trap. By the time Camilla finally stepped into the Windsor Hall, Catherine was not reacting to a surprise guest. She was reacting to a promise broken in front of everyone. The confrontation did not begin with shouting. It began with a look. Catherine stood near the head table as Camilla approached. and for a few seconds the room seemed to shrink around them. No aide moved. No musician played louder. William watched Catherine's jaw tighten, while Charles remained still beside his chair. Then Camilla said one quiet sentence, and the entire evening crossed into dangerous ground. Camilla moved toward the royal table, as though her arrival had been expected. Catherine knew it had not. The royal table, meaning the main table reserved for the most senior family members and honored guests, had already been agreed in private. That mattered, because seating inside a royal event is never random. It shows trust. It shows rank. It shows who has been protected and who has been exposed. Catherine understood that the moment the queen consort came close enough to change the entire meaning of the night. William saw the trap forming before anyone else admitted it. The seating arrangement placed Camilla close enough to Catherine that every camera angle would turn them into a forced image of unity. The prince whispered Catherine's name, not as a command, but as a plea. One more second, one more breath, one more chance to keep the fracture hidden. But Catherine felt publicly cornered. Staying would mean accepting the broken arrangement. Leaving would reveal the wound. Both choices carried a cost, and everyone around that table knew it. Camilla leaned closer, her voice calm enough to sound harmless, and sharp enough to cut. "This is where I was asked to be." The words landed heavily because they told Catherine the decision had come from above her. The queen consort was not presenting herself as an intruder. She was presenting herself as someone backed by authority. Charles did not move. The king remained beside his chair, but his silence gave the moment more power than any explanation could have. Catherine looked at him once, and that single glance asked the question he could not answer. Catherine did not argue. She did not defend herself. She answered with a fixed stare, then set her napkin beside her plate with careful precision. The napkin, a small sign of formal dinner etiquette, became more than a table detail in that moment. It became a signal that she was finished pretending. William watched her hand move and knew the evening had crossed a line. Camilla stayed still. Charles lowered his eyes. The room waited for Catherine to soften. She did not. Catherine rose from her chair, and that single gesture turned a private royal disagreement into a visible act of refusal that no aide could erase. William felt the air change as she stepped away. Camilla remained at the table, but the queen consort no longer controlled the meaning of her own arrival. Charles understood the damage had become public. Catherine's walkout raised a harder question than why she left it. Raised the question of who had the power to put Camilla there in the first place. Behind every royal table sits a map of power. A chair is never only a chair. A place card is never just paper. At Windsor, one changed seat revealed a battle that had been hidden beneath ceremony. Charles had approved the evening. William had trusted the arrangement. Catherine had believed the promise. Yet Camilla's name appeared where it was never meant to be, and one aide knew exactly when the change was made. William did not let the silence protect anyone for long. The prince moved away from the main room and confronted a senior aide in the corridor, speaking quietly but sharply, demanding to know why Catherine had been exposed that way. The gala seating plan, meaning the official list showing where important guests must sit, had passed through senior household offices before the evening began. That mattered, because a change like this could not happen by accident. It had to be cleared. It had to be allowed. Someone had looked at Catherine's place, looked at Camilla's name, and still approved the shift. Charles carried that truth like a stone. Later, the king sat alone in a side room, staring at the revised seating card with visible regret as the weight of the night settled over him. Final authority over family arrangements rested with him, and William knew it. The prince had expected one simple warning if any change touched Catherine directly. Instead, he had watched his wife stand up in public because the warning never came. Charles did not deny the mistake. He simply placed the card down, then picked it up again, as if the paper itself had become too heavy to hold. The aide finally broke. In a documented account prepared for Senior Household Review, he admitted that Camilla's team had pushed for her appearance to be treated as a natural return to royal visibility. That phrase mattered. Royal visibility means being seen at important public events in a way that reminds people of rank, status, and influence. Camilla had not only entered the room, the Queen Consort had been placed where her presence would carry meaning. William understood it at once. Catherine had not been protected from a rivalry. She had been placed inside one. Then the final detail appeared. A handwritten instruction near the seating list showed that approval had been given late, after Catherine believed the matter was already settled. William read the note once, and his expression hardened. The prince saw the timing clearly now. Charles had promised calm. Catherine had trusted that promise. Camilla's team had pushed. An aide had carried it through. And the king's silence had left Catherine standing alone with the consequence. The walkout stopped looking emotional. It started looking inevitable. Catherine had not abandoned duty. She had refused a quiet humiliation that had been arranged under the cover of ceremony. William understood the timing, Charles understood the cost, and Camilla's arrival no longer looked unexpected. It looked permitted. And as the gala continued without Catherine, the consequences began spreading through Windsor faster than anyone inside the palace expected. Nothing at Windsor looked more powerful than the chair Catherine left behind. It stood empty beneath the glow of the gala lights, untouched, impossible to explain away. Guests lowered their voices. Aides moved too quickly. Camilla remained seated, but her expression hardened as she realized the room was no longer watching her arrival. It was watching Catherine's absence. And absence, in royal life, can speak like thunder. William stayed for several minutes after Catherine walked out, and every second seemed to pull him in two directions. The prince knew duty demanded calm, but loyalty demanded action. The dinner continued, yet the mood had collapsed. A royal dinner, meaning a formal meal where senior family members are expected to show unity in front of guests, depends on rhythm, smiles, and control. That rhythm was broken now. People still lifted glasses. People still spoke softly, but every conversation had become careful, because no one could ignore the empty place where Catherine had been. Camilla sat upright with a fixed smile, but the queen consort could not hide the strain in her hands. Her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass as whispers moved along the table. She had entered expecting her presence to be accepted as part of the evening's order. Instead, Catherine's absence had turned that same presence into the reason everyone looked unsettled. Camilla understood the shift. The room was no longer asking why she had arrived. It was asking why Catherine had felt forced to leave. Charles looked toward the doorway Catherine had used, then lowered his head. The king knew the damage could not be contained by a speech or softened by music. The gala had been designed to show stability, but now it revealed a fracture too clear to disguise. Aides moved quickly near the table, trying to restore the polished shape of the evening. One palace aide stepped toward Catherine's untouched place setting, ready to remove the plate, glass, and folded napkin before more guests noticed. William stopped him with one glance. The prince did not speak, but the message was sharp. Leave it. The place setting would remain exactly where Catherine had left it. A place setting, meaning the plate, glass, and cutlery arranged for a guest, became more than dinner formality in that moment. It became proof. It showed that she had been there, that she had left, and that no quiet palace correction would erase the meaning of her exit. Charles saw William's decision and understood it was not small. Camilla saw it too, and her fixed smile weakened. The empty chair became the silent symbol of the night, more memorable than any toast, speech, or official photograph. Catherine had left the room, but her absence ruled it. William's choice to protect that chair made one thing clear. He would no longer allow the matter to be managed by protocol alone. But the true turning point came later, away from the room, when William finally found Catherine, and no palace voice stood between them. Away from the gala, the noise faded into something heavier. Catherine stood in a private sitting room, her hands still, her face calm in the way people look when they have already made peace with a painful choice. William entered without aides, without advisors, without anyone to soften the truth. For once, there was no palace machinery between them. There was only a husband, a wife, and the cost of loyalty. Catherine had not left Windsor Castle completely. She had withdrawn from the gala, but she had refused to turn the walkout into anything louder than it already was. A private sitting room, meaning a smaller royal room used for personal conversations away from guests, became the only place where the truth could breathe. That mattered because Catherine had not run from duty. She had stepped away from a public arrangement that made duty feel like surrender. William understood that the moment he entered, William closed the distance slowly, and the prince did not begin with excuses. He knew the room he had just left was still full of whispers, but Catherine's silence mattered more than any whisper behind him. She looked at him and said she could handle criticism. She could handle pressure. She could handle silence from people who wanted her to accept pain with a smile. But she could not accept a broken promise made in her name, then exposed in front of everyone, as if her dignity was just another detail to be moved. Catherine removed her evening gloves slowly and placed them on a table. The gesture was small, but it carried the weight of the whole night. Evening gloves are formal clothing worn at high royal events, but in that moment, they became a sign that she was done performing calm for people who had ignored her boundaries. She told William she would not smile through arrangements designed to diminish her. Her voice did not shake. That made the words even stronger. William listened without interrupting. The prince admitted he had seen the change coming too late, and that he should have challenged it before Catherine was forced to make the choice herself. He did not blame the room. He did not blame pressure. He accepted that waiting had cost her. Catherine watched him carefully, and for the first time that night, the hurt in her face softened into something quieter. Not forgiveness yet, not peace, but the beginning of trust returning. William answered with quiet certainty. From that night forward, he said, her role would not be negotiated behind closed doors. Catherine's place beside him would not be adjusted by late notes, hidden approvals, or whispered pressure from people trying to reshape the room before she entered it. The prince understood what this promise meant. It was not just comfort, it was a line. Their private unity changed the meaning of the walkout. Catherine had entered that room wounded, but she left it with William beside her, in a way no protocol could weaken. The gala had exposed a fracture, but this conversation gave it direction. By morning, Windsor's private rupture had escaped the palace walls, and one image captured the public mood more powerfully than any official explanation. The next morning, Britain did not wake to a normal royal headline. It woke to one picture: Catherine's empty chair at the Windsor Gala, untouched beneath the lights, with William standing nearby and Camilla seated across the room. The image traveled faster than any statement. Outside Windsor Castle, a small crowd gathered by the gates, not shouting, not celebrating, but staring as though something sacred had cracked in public. Catherine's absence had become the story before the palace could shape it. Officials prepared a controlled explanation, but the public had already understood the meaning of the photograph. A palace statement, meaning an official message released to explain or calm a royal matter, was being drafted to protect the family from deeper questions. But this mattered because the gala had been planned to show unity, not division. The royal family had entered the evening hoping to look steady, polished, and joined together. Instead, one empty chair made them look wounded at their most public moment. William's position in the image made everything harder to dismiss. The prince stood near the table, close enough to Catherine's untouched place to show loyalty, yet still inside the room, where duty had held him for a few painful minutes. Supporters saw Catherine as a woman defending her dignity when private promises failed. Critics saw danger in the same image, fearing the monarchy had exposed its internal wounds too openly. Either way, the photograph did what no speech could do. It turned silence into evidence. Camilla saw the front page at breakfast and placed it down without finishing her tea. The queen consort had expected anger, perhaps even whispers, but not this sharp public symbol. One newspaper showed the empty chair beneath the headline, "The Seat That Said Everything," and the words cut deep because they made her arrival look like the reason Catherine vanished. A newspaper front page is the most visible page of a printed paper, and in royal drama, it can turn one private moment into a national judgment. Camilla understood that judgment before anyone explained it. Charles read the same coverage with a still face, but the king knew the damage reached beyond one headline. A morning broadcaster described the walkout as not a scandal of words, but a scandal of silence, and that phrase traveled everywhere. The broadcast mattered because it framed Catherine's exit not as emotion, but as meaning. The monarch had spent years trying to hold the family image together, yet this single moment told people that something inside Windsor had been forced into the open. By midday, the crowd outside Windsor Castle had grown quiet but steady. Some held phones, some simply looked toward the gates. No one needed a long explanation. Catherine had walked out, William had protected the empty chair, Camilla had been left inside the story she helped create, and Charles had watched the results spread beyond his control. Yet the final meaning of that night would not be decided by headlines, broadcasters, or crowds. It would be decided by what the family accepted about Catherine's place after the doors closed again. And when the noise finally settled, the verdict became painfully clear. Catherine had not walked away from duty. She had walked away from disrespect. In the end, the Windsor Gala was not remembered for its guests, its music, or its polished royal display. It was remembered for one woman standing up, leaving her chair, and refusing to pretend that dignity can be traded for appearances. Catherine's walkout did not destroy the monarchy. It exposed the truth beneath it. Unity means nothing when trust has already been broken behind the scenes. Catherine had forced the royal family to face a truth it had tried to dress in ceremony. Public unity means standing together before the world, but private respect means protecting someone before the world is watching. That difference mattered because Catherine's role was not just personal. It carried the hopes of people who saw her as steady, calm, and loyal through every storm. If her place could be changed without warning, then no polished evening could hide the deeper problem inside Windsor. Charles understood that the broken promise at Clarence House had become the emotional root of everything that followed. Clarence House, a royal residence often used for private meetings and family discussions, was where the king had promised Catherine the gala would be handled with care. He knew now that the promise had not simply failed. It had collapsed in front of guests, cameras, and family. The monarch felt the cost of that failure because it had placed Catherine in a position where silence would have looked like surrender. Catherine felt pain, but not regret. She had not walked out because she was weak. She had walked out because staying would have turned humiliation into ceremony. William's loyalty became unmistakable when the prince chose to stand with her dignity rather than protect the illusion of a perfect evening. He had seen the empty chair become a symbol, and he had refused to let anyone erase it. Catherine understood that choice. The future king had not only defended his wife, he had defended the meaning of trust inside the family. Camilla's unexpected arrival revealed how fragile the balance inside Windsor had become. The queen consort had entered one room, but her entrance exposed years of quiet tension, careful smiles, and private discomfort. One chair showed what many speeches had hidden. One absence said what no palace statement dared to say. A palace statement is an official message released to guide public understanding, but no statement could change what people had already felt. Catherine's silence had spoken first, and it spoke with power. The final private decision was simple and firm. Future royal arrangements involving Catherine would be confirmed directly, not shifted through late changes, hidden approvals, or pressure carried through aides. Royal arrangements are the planned details of duties, seating, appearances, and roles at official events. And after Windsor, those details could no longer be treated as harmless. Charles accepted the change. William insisted on it. Catherine deserved it. Even Camilla understood that arrival alone does not create acceptance. The monarchy survived the night, but it changed because Catherine made clear that silence would no longer be mistaken for surrender. There was no need for another dramatic exit, no need for another public statement, and no need for another question hanging over Windsor. The verdict was complete. Catherine's walkout became the moment she drew a line. William stood beside it. Charles understood the cost of crossing it. Camilla learned that dignity cannot be pushed aside by seating, timing, or title. The gala ended, but its meaning remained fixed. Dignity had finally spoken louder than protocol. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.